Isabel is a communicator, educator, and large-scale project organiser. Her experience in the London art world led her to set up and direct the Festival of Muslim Cultures that took place across Britain throughout 2006. Over 120 events in almost every conceivable art form brought audiences into contact with the Muslim world in order to build bridges of understanding between cultures. Isabel moved to South Devon in 2010 and created and led learning programs for children and young adults with the Transition Network. Since 2012, she has trained in Regenerative Development and Design with Regenesis. She co-founded the Bioregional Learning Centre, or BLC, in 2017 in order to build collaborations to shift South Devon towards long-term climate resilience. BLC works in and at the intersection of economy, ecology, learning, arts, and culture, and the gaps in between. The team is currently leading the collective that is making a donut for Devon. So, Isabel, thanks very much for your time and welcome.
Thank you very much. I'm very pleased to be here. And wow, what a great talk from Daniel. And he's touched on so many things that are really kind of things that we're grappling with here in South Devon and Devon as a whole. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a talk about our approach to bioregions and bioregionate here in South Devon and how it interfaces with our work for the Devon Doughnut. And so I'm going to be bringing in lots of different threads, and some of which I'm only going to touch on very briefly. So please, when I get to the end of my talk, which is about 20 minutes, 25 minutes, ask me questions if there are things you haven't understood or want to go into more deeply, because I'll be kind of, it's a very kind of complex arena, this. I'm just going to be giving you a kind of taster of it. So what I want to do is to start by showing you two graphics that we made. So as Satya has just told you, we started the Bioregional Learning Centre here in South Devon in 2017, and it came out of not just kind of many years of observing and interacting with what was going on here in South Devon and getting increasingly interested in not just kind of starting new projects, but how you shift systems, how you meet systems where they are, and how you understand how to shift systems, how systems can sense and see themselves, but also how people can build collective will towards that systemic change. And in order to kind of really grapple with that in a way, we convened a course at Schumacher College in 2016, which is called Bioregions by Design. And that had two people from the Regenesis group in it, Pamela Mann and Joel Glansberg, somebody called John Thackeray, who some of you will know, who is very big in the design world, and myself. And this really was an extraordinary crucible in which we kind of honed our ideas about what happened when regeneration meets bioregions. And out of that whole 2-week-long course emerged the idea of the Learning Centre. And two people on almost the last day came up to me and said, we're just going to make this happen. And I thought, fantastic. I have no idea how to make it happen, but let's make it happen. And we've been working together ever since to kind of make it happen. So I'm going to start by showing you what we think a regenerated or regenerating bioregion would look like. And this is kind of an end goal. It's always useful to have an end goal in mind when you're doing any kind of work. So hopefully you can see that graphic. It's quite big. So I'm just going to let you read the top half, and then I'm going to scroll down to the bottom half and show you the bottom half. So these are the many ways into a bioregion. You can come down almost any pathway and you find out you end up in the same place. And we encourage people to feel that not to be overwhelmed with the complexity, potential complexity of what a bioregion is or what happens in a bioregion, but just to kind of focus on the one thing that makes them come alive and makes them feel excited and want to do something. So you won't be able to see all of this, and I'm happy to share this graphic with people afterwards as well, but it has things like co-design and innovate, sustainable fishing, investment in infrastructure, regenerating soils to increase yield, farm to table food platforms, and then just scrolling down a bit, citizen science and shared knowledge, mapping and measuring, sustainable fashion, green manufacturing, reconnecting cities to rural, building political will to act, and so on. So we know if one was to conceive of a project like that and think we've got to do all of it, it would seem completely impossible. But as Daniel has already said, in many places around the world, all of this is already happening. And one of the things we need to get better at doing is making it possible to join all that up and to value the people who are doing this work in such a way that they can see that they're part of a much bigger project. So it's not like you've got to start everything from scratch. A lot of this is already happening. Naming that it's happening and valuing it makes it happen in a much more vibrant way. So then I'm going to move on to second graphic, which is bioregioning. So what would you be doing in a bioregion to make all this actually happen? What are the skills that you would need? So again, it's quite big. I'm going to just kind of give you a layer at a time. So we call this bioregioning, all the skills and capacities that you would be bringing to the fore. So you'd be working at the edges, working at the interface between urban and rural, for instance, seeing the whole, making the region visible to itself with a clear identity and a sense of belonging, but a fuzzy edge, paying attention to systems, like, for instance, that picture is of citizen scientists at the edge of our local river, the River Dart. And we're working with West Country Rivers Trust to train more people to be citizen scientists. And we have a whole river project going, which is about access to data and knowledge, but also creativity and experiences becoming water. So here we are, the second row, mapping for vitality. One of the first things we did in this bioregion was to run a learning journey around the bioregion so people could actually see what was going on in different places. And it was enormously helpful for us. We got to know the many people who are doing fantastic work. Of course, they're isolated from each other, but people who are really thinking about the future, who are thinking about the importance on our high moorland, Dartmoor, of encouraging biodiversity to revitalize by enabling more meadows to return, meadows with many different kinds of species and flowers and grasses and insects in them. We went around the whole of South Devon looking at coastal defences, fishing, poverty, social enterprise, clean energy, and so on. Prototype and learn. I mentioned before when Daniel was talking, we want to create a learning region, confidently working without a master plan at different scales, adapting our actions in response to learning what does and does not work. And that, in a sense, is our philosophy for doing this work. Collaborating, responding rapidly to crises through strong networks of connectedness. And in fact, we define resilience in terms of that relationality and connectedness. Whatever happens, whatever project comes onto the horizon, whether it's responding to a pandemic, whether it's thinking about local food systems, the more connections you have, the more robust and resilient you are and able to respond. And here we are on the bottom row, establishing baselines. And that's where the Doughnut comes in, because we knew that we needed to establish some kind of baseline, a baseline of health and a way of measuring, not only that we could use, but any community could use to understand where they were in terms of food, energy, water, and so on, all the building blocks of life. We sailed around the Doughnut for about 2 years. We weren't sure if we wanted to use that framework as our baseline. But as I'll come to say in a little bit, in a few minutes' time, it became apparent there was a lot of energy around that, and people in Devon wanted to do it, and so we embraced that. We also tell how-to stories, raising the potential of a bioregion to operate at its best, telling a can-do story of resilience and possibility, and that feeds into regeneration, and sharing governance, valuing natural assets of the building blocks of life, talking about sea, air, soil, and water as common pool resources that we all need to steward. And some of the work we're doing at the moment is creating a charter for our local river, a charter that gives moral rights to the river. They're not legal rights, they're moral rights. But this is all about water as a common pool resource and how we share governance and how local people can name the assets that they care about and want to become stewards of. So having kind of introduced you to that thinking about bioregions and bioregioning, I'm now going to talk more about what happens when bioregioning meets the donut. And that really gets us into thinking about local economies.